big news that broke this evening, though, and that is that Manuel Pellegrini has left West Ham United after that 2-1 defeat to Leicester earlier on. Rob Green, former West Ham player, your reaction to the news?
Well, they were listening to us at half-time, weren't they? It's no great surprise. Football now in the Premier League in particular is a cutthroat industry, and if it's not going for you, the cost of relegation for a club like West Ham, he talked about Norwich, falling on the sword a bit with Daniel Farke and the principles that they have and the acceptance of going down. For a club like West Ham, it's you can't think of it really. The owners won't be able to comprehend it, and they need that bounce. They need the Duncan Ferguson and Ancelotti bounce that Everton have attained, and they'll hope for that. And whether they appoint someone till the end of the season just to see him over the line, we don't know, but they'll certainly have irons in the fire as who they want to have.
John, how do you think Pellegrini's time as West Ham manager will be remembered?
Well, I think there were plenty of positives last season, and when they were good under Pellegrini, they were very good. Felipe Anderson, at times last season was outstanding. This season, he just hasn't really performed for them. And they're in a position now where they're just 1 point above the relegation zone, West Ham, and probably feeling that they had to make that decision. But, when I've seen them this season, there've been he seems to have been rather hesitant to make decisions. I think the West Ham supporters have questioned some of his selections. I certainly was there the day that he picked Pablo Zabaleta against, what was the game when I'm trying to remember which game it was, when Zabaleta was absolutely caught out and he was playing against a really speedy forward, and he chose Zabaleta in that match rather than Ryan Fredericks, and it was questioned before the match, and he was very late in making the change during that game. He showed great faith in his goalkeeper Roberto, who was having a terrible time, and eventually made the change to bring in David Martin. So I think it's just not gone his way this season, and as I mentioned during the commentary, he's not got the best out of his players this season, and when that happens, there is usually only one result.
I think as well, guys, as a test as a manager, and someone like Sean Dyche has lived by this, is that how quickly can you arrest that slump? And if you can't, then there's only one answer really, because people can't afford, they just literally cannot afford to sit by the side and watch that slump continue.
Yes, the game I was thinking of when Alan Saint-Maximin was playing against Zabaleta and gave him a terrible time.
Do you think it's deserved, Will?
I mean, we were looking back, and excuse me for my maths, I only got a C in GCSE maths, so my English is bad as well.
Got an F in English.
better than a G, though.
They spent around £150 million over 2 seasons, so I mean,
a lot of money.
That's a lot, isn't it? And when you think he hasn't got the best out of those players, they need someone in. They really need a coach, and I think they can maybe look to change that recruitment. Maybe look for a director of football to maybe look at those needs.
But I mean, there were some abysmal performances as well under Pellegrini. I remember particularly seeing them in the FA Cup at Wimbledon last season, when they were absolutely played off the park by Wimbledon. And that wasn't the only occasion.
Who were bottom of the first the Division 1, League 1, sorry, at the time. So, I mean, and also you're looking at your home form. You need to survive on your home form in the Premier League, and they keep on letting in 3 goals at home. The game against Newcastle, you talked about, game against Arsenal. They keep on conceding goals at home, and it's so costly.
Well, let's go there then, because, this is inevitably where the conversation is going to head. There's some names being thrown around already, with David Moyes, the odds-on favourite. He's kept them up once before, but the fans didn't want him, so it would be an interesting choice to bring him back, Rob.
Yeah, it would be. But then you say, well, David Moyes, a bit like Nigel Pearson, has got something to prove now, hasn't he? And he's had a number of positions where it didn't go so well. And I think that looking at it, he might come into it with a newfound resolution or a new lease of life. And from that, you're saying, well, okay, maybe, as I said, a short-term appointment to the end of the season. And if you do keep us up, then thank you very much. Here's a big bonus. See you later. That sort of thing. We don't know. We don't know what they've got lined up. But there's big names out there. Emery's obviously a shout. And Benitez, as John said, is another one who's out in China and saying he's not coming back. But there's managers out there who would love to come and take the opportunity to manage West Ham.
And this decision's come when their next match is at home to Bournemouth on New Year's Day, and then they'll have the FA Cup tie at Gillingham next weekend, and then Sheffield United away. But certainly that match against Bournemouth for West Ham, that probably played a part in the decision that they felt that they had to make the change now.
Well, you don't want to give him that game to win, because then if he does win it, then you got to stick by him, haven't you?
Well, let's get a West Ham perspective on this from a fan. We've got Dave Walker from the West Ham Way podcast. Hello, Dave, mate.
Hello, mate. How you keeping? You well?
Yeah, not too bad, my friend. How are you feeling in the wake of this news?
Well, I've got mixed emotions, to be honest with you. I mean, on the one hand, I'm pleased he's gone. Massively overdue sacking, in my opinion. On the other hand, I feel really angry because I look upon this on reflection, and I just think that Pellegrini's taken a liberty with West Ham, to be quite honest with you. You know, he quite clearly, given the age that he's at, and I'm going to be quite brutal on this, he's gone to China for a pension, and he's been given another chance to have retirement in England. And I think West Ham have thrown money at him, and he's looked at it and he's thought, where would I like to retire most, China or England? I'll take England, and I'll take the foot off the gas. I'll enjoy life, ultimately, until I get sacked. And do you know what? Ironically, I think one of the most relieved people in England at the moment about his sacking is Pellegrini. He didn't want to manage this club. He's taken an absolute liberty with West Ham, absolute liberty. He's not the man that he used to be. If you look at him, he's had a coveted career. You know, he's managed Real Madrid at the highest level in European football. He won the Premier League title with Man City, worked wonders with Malaga. He's come to West Ham, really and truly just to retire. And I wish him luck. I hope he enjoys his life with his family on a beach somewhere. But in the process, I think he should hang his head in shame. I think he's taken liberties with West Ham. I really do. Pleased to see him gone.
So, hang his head in shame, Rob Green. What do you think of that?
Well, he's been given another chance in the Premier League, and he's going to back himself to make it a success. And it's not been the case. I mean, it's a really tough one because, you know, I think that it's a club that really can be competing towards the top end of the Premier League. Maybe not the top four, but, you know, you look at Leicester and you say, well, why not West Ham? And season after season, it's not them. And so, you know, you say, well, how many managers is it going to take for them to get it right? And is it the manager, or is it the club, or is it the structure? What's it about the club that makes it not a club that's able to do a Leicester or you know, punch above their weight?
Dave, who do you want to see coming? Because we've already discussed David Moyes is the name that's flying around already, but will that appease you and the West Ham fans, or do you want to see someone completely different?
Well, firstly, I want to say, talking about retirement, Robbo, I loved you at West Ham, mate. I wish you all the best for the future. Good luck to you. You was
Thanks
a quality keeper for West Ham, and I think you're a top keeper and a top fella.
I was waiting for the call this season, but never got it.
I'm not related to Robbo, by the way. I just want to put that out there. He didn't pay me any money to say that. Listen, in terms of who comes in, we're in almost the impossible position of asking the question, if Pellegrini goes, who comes in? And I don't think there's one single person out there who really excites me, who we've got to go and get. And you also got to balance the difference between optimism and realism and reality. Because I'd love to see Pochettino get the job. Absolutely no chance in a million years he'll come here. You know, Allegri, no chance. So we've got to look at the realistic options here. For me personally, who I'd be happy with is one of two. I've dwindled it down in my mind that I think realistic options would be either Kovac from Frankfurt. He's worked with Haller. He's got a very good record there. I think he's won 4 trophies in 3 seasons. He's only 48 years of age, so he's young, he's dynamic, he's enthusiastic. It's a gamble because he's never managed in the Premier League, but one that I'll be potentially prepared to take. Or Bielsa at Leeds. Disciplinarian, does his research on the opposition. You know, good, credible career. Where I think he's actually going to go is the opposite. I think we're looking at a David Moyes. Now, I've got mixed emotions on this again because with David Moyes, he came in before in a very difficult period at West Ham, and he'd done a very good job. For what he was employed to do, he did a very good job. But ultimately, we left Upton Park with the vision, and some might say the promise, of taking us to the next level. taking us away from years and years of hurt, of pain, of disappointment, of frustration, to seriously compete at that level. Now we find ourselves nearly 4 years on into the new stadium, and we are in a relegation scrap. That is absolutely not good enough. Now, I actually feel a degree of sympathy for the owners, because like me, they would have looked at Pellegrini and they would have bought into the fact this is genuinely a statement of intent, a real ambitious move to bring a manager in of pedigree, someone that's credible, that's been there and done it, to take us forward. That hasn't happened for reasons I've already said. But how are you going to go on from there? You're now looking at David Moyes. From my perspective, that is a backward step, if not a sideward step. Yeah. And I think that everyone would feel quite deflated about that, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. Right, Dave, thank you very much for coming on. I wish you well for the rest of the season, mate.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. Good speaking to you, lads. Good luck to you for 2020. All the best.
Nice one. Thank you. That's Dave Walker there from the West Ham Way podcast. Some strong words there, Rob Green, for your ex-club. The fans really need galvanising at West Ham. They've been unhappy for a while. We saw some unsavoury scenes at the London Stadium last season and the season before. So would a David Moyes appointment really be the one?
Results would be the one. That's the bottom line. And I'm sure if you said to the West Ham fans, look, it may be a short-term thing, it may be just to the end of the season, but we really need someone just to see us through. If he does that job, then, much like David said, then he's kind of, he came in a difficult position and he did his job. And that's what he did. Now you say, well, they're in a difficult position, and he used the word himself, it's realism. And so you're looking at it and you say, well, are you going to take that risk, or do you want someone to keep you in the division where you think is going to give you the best chance? It's a tough call, a really tough call. But, it's Ancelotti's gone. You're not going to get someone like that again, and so it's a really tough decision for the owners, but one that we'll have to watch and see.
Which I think is an agonising one for West Ham and their supporters, because I would feel that would have been the sort of club that would have interested Ancelotti with that everything that they have now. However, I would also say that is a squad of players that West Ham have that should never be relegated from the Premier League.
No, but you say that, but you're looking at that and you're saying, with Fabianski being out for as long as he has, you're talking with a goalkeeper who hasn't been good enough. A number of players have been missing. And with someone like Ancelotti, he's going to be interested in a project, and the amount of money basically that can be put behind it, and you say we've got these players that you can work with, and we've got a structure for the future. Now, someone like West Ham have to prove that. Everton have spent a lot of money building behind the background. They're putting money into a new stadium. I know West Ham have a new stadium, and that goes without saying, but it's proving that they have that structure to excite someone like Ancelotti to buy into.
Will Brazier from Sporf, still alongside me here. You are somebody who loves to throw in a bit of a curveball name when it comes to manager searches. I think when Watford sacked Quique Sanchez-Flores, you were talking about Troy Deeney becoming player manager. Have you got anything quite as outrageous?
I haven't done my badges, so you can count me out. Yeah.
That was my next one for Rob there. It's just more to keep you on your toes, isn't it? But I mean, when we're looking at different ex-playing options, I'm not going to go as maverick as Mark Noble, because I think he needs to carry on with his good form for the club. But maybe either look down in the Championship, someone like a Lee Bowyer. I mean, what the board need to do is bring someone in to excite the fans. But I think whoever comes in needs to manage those. There's a lot of egos in that team. Since David Moyes was there last time, we spoke about the money they've spent on the signings, and it just seems like a bit of a fractured dressing room. I heard lots of times, I've got a few West Ham fans about the West Ham way. I couldn't tell you what that is now, and they need a new ethos for the club.
And it would be a disaster, wouldn't it, Rob, if they were to get relegated, being in the new stadium now. We touched on it there with Dave. They were promised certain things moving out of Upton Park, the home that they loved for years and years, to the London Stadium. It's not in the same area of London as well, which was a problem for a lot of the fans. And now they're, staving off relegation.
Yeah, let's get one thing straight. The move to the new stadium was always going to happen. It was an opportunity that they couldn't turn down. And it was, yes, it's not in West Ham. It's not Upton Park. It's not got the same atmosphere as Upton Park. It's never going to have that. And I feel for that. I love playing at Upton Park. And the away players used to love playing there as well because it was a proper old stadium. Moving to the new stadium, Tottenham probably would have moved there if they hadn't have done. So it's one that they could not afford to turn down. But it's the investment in everything else. It's the structure. It's the building of a future of the club. It's everything around it that comes with it that really needs to sell the club to an owner like that. And I think with the fans, it's one that, yeah, a relegation. Wow, playing. We got relegated to West Ham, and we had a season in the Championship, getting promoted again, and it can be tough at times because it's in London and people have other things to do than go and watch football games. And if it's not against a big club, then some of the percentage of fans did turn up, and you weren't getting as bigger crowds at Upton Park than you would have done in the Premier League. That's going to be even worse in the new stadium if they do go down. It'll be a big cavernous bowl of a stadium which will fill if that a quarter full.
Fixture-wise, John, we've already mentioned that it could be a good time for a new manager to come in, but also that they want to get this sorted as soon as possible because the January transfer window is about to open, and will they be looking to make some changes?
Well, you would anticipate that would be the case. Often that is the case, isn't it? That we see managerial changes at this time of year in anticipation of the January transfer window. But again, I would go back to the fact that I think the squad that they have there is plenty for a new manager. There is plenty to play with there in terms of the personnel that they already have, and simply getting the best out of players. I mean, Declan Rice, for example, who looked so good last season in his breakthrough season, he just hasn't been the same player this season. No. So that's certainly one player you could start with to work your managerial magic to get him back to the player that he was last season.